Ooh,
Wow, we just don't get a 30-second window anymore.
Oh no, I just, why have a 30-second window when we can just go right into it, Grand Arbiter? Why do a
Such is life.
countdown
Such is life.
when we're so
You must sometimes
excited?
just stumble forward.
We just hurl ourselves into the teapots, hurling into tea time. Hello, Grand Arbiter.
Hello. I think we're going to give folks a few moments to show up today as we showed up
Yes,
fairly quickly. And,
yes.
madam, I don't mean to abandon you,
Yeah, oh dear.
but there has been a little accident off stage. I have to deal with it just a second.
Oh
I
heavens.
I left some water running. I need to go turn off.
Oh dear. No, you must go. Hurry off to the pantry to save the butler from the flooding teapots. Hello, Alicia. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for tea time. It's so wonderful to see you. Thank you for being here. We're back after our short break. May was really chaotic for us, unusually so. And some of that was very joyful reasons, right? I mean, most of it was actually for very joyful reasons because we had the opportunity to participate in the virtual Wild Wild West Con 13.5. And so we took that weekend off from tea to in part so as not to conflict with the event, but also so that we could go and enjoy the event. And it was lovely. It was so wonderful to be with everyone virtually and to celebrate our Wild Wild West Con community and family. And that is our home show, and we're just delighted to participate. And then, of course, I whisked my way off to Cascadia to visit the Grand Arbiter and our dear chums there for a sort of long holiday weekend and drink scads of tea and eat too many wonderful meals to even talk about. It was fantastic. Oh my goodness, Alicia was off having ribs on that Saturday of Wild Wild West Con, and honestly, Alicia, there have been few better reasons to not participate in something. I love a good
That is your
rib.
favorite part of animals to consume. When you
Well,
must devour the flesh of children of animal children.
children, you're making me sound like such a monster. No, I do love the barbecue, and I'm particularly keen on ribs. It's true. And I will go after them with a will. So yes, that's absolutely the case, Grand
And it's been
Arbiter.
it's been a long few weeks. We haven't seen y'all in many a
No,
moon.
no, I was so delighted to be here. Thank you for joining us. I was just regaling them with like some of what disrupted our May schedule and where we were. We did the virtual Wild West Con. I came up to Cascadia and kidnapped you for several days for adventure with our chums.
It was
I
torture.
it was I mean, I know I tormented you.
Torturous. Yes.
It was terrible. There was
Tea-based waterboarding.
all of those wonderful meals, such horror, such devastation. How you suffered, Grand
I
Arbiter.
do. I do. I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So hopefully I will manage some reviews over some of those restaurants. But
I mean, you owe at least one. You owe at
I
least one.
we do need to talk about tea. We had a lovely tea at the top of Smith Tower, which is a beautiful historic building in downtown Seattle. And it was a really lovely space. I knew nothing about Smith Tower beforehand, and I learned so much during that tea. Hello, Lady June Squirrel. Welcome to tea time. Happy birthday eve. Lady June Squirrel's birthday is on Sunday, everyone, so please wish her an early happy birthday. It was very exciting. Yes, and hello, Scone Mistress. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It's also Chicago Steampunk Expo weekend. And of course, many of our wonderful chums, our beautiful steampunk community, is there this weekend having a grand
I was wondering
time.
where everyone was, and I was like, yes, of course. That's why they've chosen to abandon us, hurt us,
Yes.
and wound us in this way, break our spirits so that we cannot continue to live, throw ourselves into the void,
Into the
ensuring
void.
that we are consumed by darkness.
Oh, are we doing darkness tonight? Oh,
Darkness.
darkness. I got the right fan for it. Darkness.
Yes. So, Madam Askew, what were some of your favorite parts of your? Let's start with Wild West Con. We had a
Yes.
great time doing our panels that we missed.
Yes, we did.
We got to do, and what was special is that we got to do stuff that we didn't actually intend to do with Charles and with Eve.
That's
And
correct.
because of the scheduling, we were able to do it with Charles and Eve instead.
Yes, that was so lovely. We'd already always planned to do the Weirdo Queerdos horror panel with Charles and Eve. They're both huge fans of horror. And oh my goodness, Lady June Squirrel has the void sitting on her lap, not even hurling herself into the void, embracing the void. So yeah, I loved getting to do that horror panel. It was such a good conversation, and I felt like I learned a lot during the panel, including how many horror movies I actually have watched. So that was really fun, but also, you know, that was your baby. That panel was your brainchild.
I mean, I was its father. I was its mother. I helped gestate it, but its father was clearly Eve Riot.
No, Eve did so much work for that panel. Really, they did so much research and really whipped it into shape. It was important to me that we get to do it with them, and it was just such a lovely time. Oh my goodness. Oh, all the voids are coming out to harangue their owners, our void kitties. We love them. I miss mine. But no, so that panel was really amazing, I thought. And then we got to do the one that was my little brainchild, which was the fashion plate
And I helped.
you did help. It was a team effort, and I loved that Charles was willing to come along for that adventure.
So during the event, we were doing the funniest part about it was we were doing this event where we were reviewing fashion plates that Madam Askew and I had like selected and organized for like reviewing and judging.
Yes.
And about like 20 minutes in, Charles reveals that he can't see the images that we're providing. And so he's just been basing his opinions on vibes and vibes alone.
And our descriptions. Vibes and our descriptions. And so we got him set up with being able to see the images, but it was a really delightful moment. Because his takes had not been bad takes. So we were all like, yes,
but they were weird takes. They weren't bad, but they were like, sure.
No, it was a wonderful panel though, and it was such fun that we'll probably do iterations of it.
We'll do some iterations of it, I think, in the future. I think none will be quite as strong as this one. Mostly just because there's just the best like concepts of like the fancy dress is just the most fun to talk about.
So fun. Yes. Well, it is so Victorian 19th century European fashion, Victorian fashion is so over the top, so flamboyant, especially when it comes to sort of the more feminine looks and the dandy looks, and so they really give themselves already a lot of fripperies, and then when it comes to the fancy dress, they're like, hold my tea, you thought the 5 layers of ruffles was a lot, wait until you see what I can do with a moth, right? So it is a really fun kind of premise, and it inspired the Victorians to be over the top, which allows us to really riff on their fashions in some fun ways. And also fancy dress is one of our favorite things.
I mean, I know I love a fancy dress.
Right, and we often do something that's sort of theme based for our costumes.
I mean,
That's
we're
sort of like,
fancy dress adjacent is the best
yeah,
way I can describe what we do. We're fancy dress
absolutely,
adjacent.
yes. So anyway, that was wonderful panel. We had a great time, and Eve and Charles really brought a lot of wonderful energy to that discussion. I was delighted we got to do it again. I wasn't able to attend a lot of the other things throughout the weekend because we always have a very busy schedule, and I had
You
other
had
commitments.
book club.
I had book club, and book club was an absolute treat this month. We had the pleasure of welcoming our author as our guest. So Piper J. Drake joined us to discuss her novella, Keeping Cadence, which is one of the steampunk works she did early in her career as an author. And it's a very classic steampunk in that there's airships and airship pirates and mad science and weird tech and, corrupt officials and corrupt aristocrats and people doing nefarious things for profit. But it's also a very steamy novel in which there's more than smooching and more than ankles on display. So if that gives you pause, just a word of warning, this is a romance, and the romance is on the page, and so is the fun times between our romantic pair.
When you're thinking of her as an author, I know that we think of her as like this is one of her early works, and
Yes.
so what would you describe as currently like one of her crystallizing works? One of the works that really is an elevation of her craft and really shows the best she can do.
I really think the current series she's working on, the Mythwoven series, which it's so.
The first one is the Fangs book.
Oh God, I think Fangs So Bright and Deadly is the second book, and now that we're talking about it, I'm like, what is the title of the first book? They're all inspired by the mythological creature that is at the heart of the series. And so the first one is Wings Once Cursed and Bound, and the second one is Fangs So Bright and Deadly. And she's currently working on the third book. And I just think Piper has written urban fantasy, and Piper has written romance and romantic suspense, and these combine those elements into a singular series of books. So you get a little bit of romantic suspense, you get a lot of urban paranormal fantasy, you get some very sultry, wonderful moments between the love interests, and also it's exploring sort of world mythology with a focus on a lot of Southeast Asian mythology. And so it's gorgeous, and also don't read the books hungry because they're constantly eating delicious things, and I am always left like wishing I had a plate of fruit or noodles or something to nibble on whilst I'm reading, because by the end of my reading session I'm like, I have to whisk off to the pantry and put together a little snack. So she also this is another thing that she does in lots of her books, is that she talks about the food. It's food culture is very important to her characters. But yeah, I love the Mythwoven series. It's so fantastic.
Well, speaking of books,
yes,
we do have a Patrons Corner, and we've been sort of neglecting Patrons Corner the last few sessions.
That's correct.
We've
Because
cut it down. We've had some very exciting other things going on. So let's we're gonna spend some extra time today talking through Patrons Corner. Today's Patron Corner winner is, drum roll, formative fictions. We'll be talking about books that molded us as people, inspired us, and continue to inspire us.
Yes.
Continue.
Yeah, well, and very specifically, this is the fantasy fiction that really inspired us as young people. I'd say young is a little bit broad. We're not like
saying, just so we're clear, we're still young. We're still young.
We're still young.
We're still young.
I mean,
so we're clear, I'm going to be wrinkled with bones and ankles that have no cartilage between any of them, and I will demand that people call me a young man.
You listen, Grand Arbiter, you are the personification, the avatar of some force in the universe. It changes depending on the season and the cup of tea. But I'm like 49,000 years old. We're clearly going to be young forever. That's just how that works for us.
That's just how it is.
So
no. I think informative is not doing a lot of heavy lifting. They're formative.
They're formative.
And things can form you well into your hundreds.
That's correct. That is correct. You're never too young to be informed by a piece of art.
I think we should talk first about the fantasy series that got us into reading. We were both big readers.
Yes, we were.
From a young age, but like both of us, I mean, I don't read as much because I read too many philosophy books, and that will really make you never want to read again. Read one too much Heidegger, and you're like, I've built up an intolerance to words.
Yeah, no, Heidegger will do that to you.
Be careful with your German philosophers, particularly the ones that have some Nazi ideology in the veins.
Thanks, Heidegger.
No. Mixed bag.
So I have a confession to make.
Yes.
And I was thinking about this when I was, sort of pondering, talking about this particular theme. And so I've always loved stories very much. And I was quite fortunate that my grandparents, my grandmama, my grandpapa, were very avid readers and avid storytellers. And so they read to me very extensively when I was small, and told me stories and shared what they were reading with me. But I actually had a hard time learning to read as a young person. And I still struggle with some kinds of texts. If you have ever talked to me about graphic novels or comic books, you'll know that I really almost cannot read them, not because I don't admire them, but because I get sort of overwhelmed by the movement of the text on the page. So I need a very linear movement of text.
I mean, you have your own stuff.
I do. So I didn't really become an avid reader on my own steam, as it were, until I was in about towards the end of primary school. So around 11, I was really reading with enough facility to read on my own, finally. And then I took off like a whirlwind of reading, and was quite keen, although my family was not very wise about what to hand a young person, and perhaps it was the era. I mean, we are talking about like the 1840s at this point. There wasn't a
Well, and
lot
you are
of
it's a big mixed bag. But
yeah.
what would you say is the book that really like you felt the fire in you for the first time? You like devoured a book cover to cover
And had
with
to read the next one.
yeah.
It was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
That's
By
a very
C.S.
common one
Yeah.
for people of a certain age. I read a lot of books as a kid, and I did read Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe with less intensity as we get farther in the series, as is the problem with that book series.
Yes. Yes.
So when I was younger, my parents did read to me a lot. They did read, and I was reading at about 11. So here's the secret. I was of exactly 11 when Harry Potter came out for America.
Oh my goodness.
So it was I was like right at the cusp, and it was not the first book I devoured though. I had been full on obsessed, and this is for like younger readers because I got read to a lot by my parents. My parents were very invested in books on tape, so I consumed a lot of that. But I was very into the Magic Treehouse series of like learn to read books. They're like young, like they're like middle grade, middle lower grade short fiction about a magic treehouse that takes you places through books. Very, very like hat in a hat a little bit. But the main character who helps you is Morgan Le Fay, which I think is fun. She's like a friendly lady.
Yeah, she gets a bad rap in some of the Arthurian
She's
legends.
She's the ally to the main characters in that one. It's a time traveling treehouse though, and all of the titles of the books are very silly. So all the Treehouse book series, they are like very short and they're very quick reads, and they're by Mary Pope Osborne, and their original printing was, I'm double checking, 1990 something. Let's see, let's double check. When was this one printed? 1992 was the first one. And they have like an arc in each series where there's like an arc of books that are all connected that you read together. So they're like chapters.
I love that.
And all the American titles, because originally in English in Britain, and then they move it to the United States and they gave them new titles, they all have like silly, like time-based titles. So it's Dinosaurs Before Dark, The Night at Dawn, Mummies in the Morning, Pirates Past Noon, Night of the Ninjas. Very like this, it has a very, they have like a temporal. Lions at Lunchtime is another one.
Yes.
It's very cute. And there's like a lot of them, and they're for middle grade. So they're very easy to read very quickly. And I think it is before your time. But possibly not. I'm not sure. The Scholastic Book Fair is a thing that like magically.
No, let's talk about it. I love the Scholastic Book Fair.
It is a geek's dream. It's a store with only things that you like in one place.
Books, right? But before we get into this, the magic of the Scholastic Book Fair, I have to say I love this. An uncle and aunt with a magic library full of books is just like such a treasure trove for the young, voracious reader. And honestly, like your Uncle Dick and your Aunt Jackie, Alicia, are clearly lifetime members of Lambworth, because this is important.
Although they do sound like, nope, I'm going to make that joke later.
Yes, yes. Also, I love this. Lady June Squill was reading the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe books in elementary school and introduced them to her daughters. I think they're wonderful gateway books, especially like the early set in the series.
I mean, the books are like, so here's what I'll say is the books for the analog, the analog is deep, even if it becomes like obvious if you file this. It's the serial numbers are not filed off that hard, but it really does require that you actually put the pieces together. It's not quite simple. And also, it's a little bit blasphemous. You're displaying, the metaphor is that Jesus is a lion, presented as a lion, not a man, which is very like, there are segments of that, like, people have started entirely new religions and split off and moved to the United States for less.
Yes, but we're I'm not religious, so this is
no,
like
I don't
an area which I'm like,
I don't think of it. I just think it's interesting as a series because they are controversial, even in the spaces that they occupy. That arguably they are the strongest. It is the strongest advocate for. It is still sort of like there's schisms.
Fascinating. Well, they were still wonderful gateways for even those of us young people who were not particularly indoctrinated into that ideology. And when you don't know what it's referencing, they still encourage you to be kind and thoughtful and support your family and friends and to have good ethics. And so that's nice. But for me, it was all about the adventure.
Okay, for me, I'm not saying, so like when I first read those books, Mr. Tumnus is like super hot, right?
Yes.
Like he's like a super kind guy with hooves.
I definitely wanted to go have tea with Mr. Tumnus.
I mean, I just think he's got the business. He's got some stuff going on. Also, in the audiobooks and in the movies, they've picked the hottest men possible to play Aslan. It is very uncomfortable.
Yeah, poor Aslan. Also, C.S. Lewis was clearly obsessed with Turkey and Turkish because he had Turkish delight and he used Aslan, which means lion in Turkish. Very on the nose. But yeah, so we have to get back to this though. The Scholastic Book Fair, absolutely,
it's a magical experience, and I think 100%. Like what I like about Scholastic Book Fair is there's this real push to put something at the price range for everybody.
Yes,
you're not going to be able to get everything that you want. You might not even get your favorite thing, but no one is going to leave there without a little eraser or a little few dollar book. It's not like
a small token.
Yeah, it's not something where it's like you're completely blocked out from access. Which they could make an argument that like that's the intention. I know that I have purchased, and a lot of the things that I purchased were things that had books. I got to tell you, I was a sucker for a book with an accessory.
Oh.
So I don't know if you know this, but as the book fair expanded, one of the things they would do is they'd have a book with like a little accessory from the book as part of the experience, because that is the kind of vibe that kids like. It's a little toy that ties to the book you're reading that's a
I
fun
love that.
experience.
That's lovely.
I
That was
was
definitely, I don't recall that being part of the experience when I went, but I am, even though we're both ageless, timeless time travelers, I am slightly older than you. So I experienced the Scholastic Book Fair in its earlier incarnation. And my big thing was the Choose Your Own Adventure books. They were not terribly expensive, which was very important for my personal constraints at that time. And I could only ever afford one book at the book fair. And so I would always choose a new Choose Your Own Adventure, and I was
you
obsessed.
remember like the favorite like overarching book title?
No, I don't. Alas,
It's
alas. But I do think, yes, this is a steampunk auction theme. It's just like the whole steampunk vibes of like book fair and books that take you on adventures is very, very in the steampunk landia vibes, right? So yeah.
So the series that because I had to look it up because I'm obsessed. Importantly, the book series with an accessories that I became obsessed with is called the Jewel Kingdom series, and it's definitely for young girls. And all of the tchotchkes are jewelry.
Oh,
because
lovely.
I was gay for a long time before myself and everyone else accepted it as reality. It's just sort of like, you really like jewels, huh? Jewel tones, jewel experiences.
Listen,
Oh,
you were
I feel like
you
that could be a euphemism. Like, oh, is he a jewel princess?
Yes, you were a jewel princess and a young boy who needed wishing well and
oh gosh, the way we need a well.
So one of the other things about this era, and yes, I was really obsessed with the opportunity to like drive the story because I loved storytelling, and so there was something very charming about being able to like direct how that story was going in the Choose Your Own Adventures. But also, I would sometimes check all of the pathways because I also had early signs of adult challenges as a young person.
Also, this is how you read books now.
Yes.
You often read books backwards.
I always read the end.
You're just always channeling Merlin every day.
That's me. Yes. You're channeling Morgan Le Fay and I'm channeling Merlin.
Yeah, no, I'm out here serving and you're like, gotta do things backwards or this one twink I need to save will die.
No, we cannot have that. Not twink death. So
as we got older, you and I really converged on some things around the same time of our temporal ages.
Yes.
Around, 15, 16, 17.
Yes.
That is when we approached one mean bitch, Mercedes Lackey, and Magic's Pawn. Okay, Magic's Pawn is such a weird book for its time frame and for like, who is this for? So for those who don't know, Magic's Pawn is, and I'm sorry if I keep rubbing my eyes. I am still dealing with many allergies.
Right, Arbiter.
So Magic's Pawn is what we call a part of the 80s. I'd say it's like gothic fantasy time, like pretty close to that era, and is sort of defined by deep tragedies happening to our main character. Our main character is going to go through it, and it's just going to suck the whole way down.
So this Magic's Pawn, which is the first book in the series, came out in 1991, and I'm positive I read it in like 1991. So I had a wonderful lending library that was not, it was very close to my darling friend Terry's home, and we would walk there together from her home. It was like a 2-block walk, but it was like a mile from my grandmama's house, and so, or a mile or two, so I would walk there sometimes from my grandmama's to go to the library. And the librarian was very kind and very, accepting of these idiosyncratic, somewhat quirky teenagers coming in. Terry and I read through
I
the
think
entire
that's the
science
defining
fiction.
piece. Don't they have, you have to pass a test to become a librarian to prove that you're an esoteric, quirky teenager?
Yes. I think the best librarians pass that test anyway. So um she was wonderful. We read through the entirety of their science fiction and fantasy section, which was very small, to be fair. It was like, the 6-foot tall library shelves. It was 2 of those. We read through the whole thing. And when we got to Mercedes Lackey, I fell in love. And she actually came to that library at one point and did a talk, and I got to go and hear her speak about being a writer and what it took to become a writer. But this, something about this book that both the Grand Arbiter and I were talking about is that for me, this was the first time I'd ever read a book that had on the page out queer characters, not just queer coded, but out queer character. And the character is the main character of the story. Mercedes Lackey was part of a vanguard of people at that time writing out queer characters in fantasy spaces. She certainly was not the only one. Lynn Llewellyn also wrote some wonderful queer characters. But I found Mercedes Lackey first, and I webbed my way through the entire series. I saved
big
all of my
challenge.
money to buy these at B. Dalton Books, right? So I could own my own copies. They are very dear to me.
And I think it's interesting because it's one of those things where you and I both know that the tragedy of queer media is something that is like born out of the Hays Code and has become somewhat of a trope. But there's something actually really valuable about queer tragedy that I think is undervalued as we move into this modern era.
Mm.
I am going to make a really bold statement.
Ooh.
I think consuming queer tragedy makes you resilient towards true tragedy that queer people experience on the regular. And if you consume only media in which queer people are happy and don't have challenges for being queer, you will be underprepared for the reality of the situation.
Yes. So I think it's very important that we also have joyful queer stories.
Oh, of course.
Absolutely. And I love that there are so many more of those these days. I do think some of the pushback is because for a long time all we had were tragic stories.
Of course.
But this Mercedes Lackey was writing this in the late 80s, the early 90s, during the sort of height of the AIDS tragedy and the AIDS pandemic. And as it was, just decimating the queer community. And so there was a lot of tragedy, but also a sort of, there was this tension in the media between vilifying queer people and also people being like, these are we, and the people who are affected are deserving of compassion and kindness and love, and remembering that we're human beings. And I feel like this is a very humanizing series.
I mean, it's also important that their tragedy is not because they're queer, I think, is the other component. The tragedy of the book is not about queerness. It is about hubris and well, someone made some wrong. The quest for vengeance and the consequences of those choices is like the reoccurring theme of the first book. Is about how vengeance destroys you, and how, and that like these kinds, like those are different narratives than like the challenge of, for me, the challenge of something like Brokeback Mountain is that the cost that's paid is always like, it's always sort of like bad things happen to them because they're queer, and because they're queer they had this experience, and it's like these are all factual things that could happen, and they are things that happen. But there's also this point in which it's also not telling us anything. It doesn't tell us to be like the narrative. The end of the story is just, isn't it sad? And I think that that's one of the bigger challenges, is like, isn't it sad isn't enough for queer media. Like I think that that's one of the things that makes Brokeback like incredibly important for its time, and no longer has a place in the current like list of queer movies that you watch as part of queer canon. But things like Paris is Burning and other things like that still have a place because they're set reality, and the lesson is about the time frame it occupies. I am really invested in this idea that like all media has purpose and all media has value. And when I think about Mercedes Lackey as a piece of media, I remember the tragedy of it. But the thing I remember the most is the way in which the main character has a community that catches him. And I think that that's another like it's the tragedy is a consequence of life, but not the narrative's end bit story. Like queer stories end with death in these tragedies, but this one's a one that it's the turning point, right?
Yes. But also I think something about this book, and as we're talking about it, so Vaniel, the main character of the series,
very silly name though, Vaniel.
Listen, I love that name, all right? And I love my purple-eyed white horses.
Oh my god, the purple-eyed white horses! oh my gosh, the things that the one thing that we definitely know about Mercedes Lackey is that bitch is a horse girl.
That's true.
That bitch
She's
is not a horse girl. Mercedes Lackey is the horse girl. She is the model from which all horse girls are formed.
She's wonderful. But yes, absolutely a horse girl. And these books kind of were for horse girls because, you know, there's this whole magical bond with your white.
The magic horses have purple eyes. The magic horses have purple eyes, and they're magical horses.
Yes. Look, you become a mage, you get your magical white horse with purple eyes. You have a psychic bond. Only you can ride your horse. Your horse loves you beyond all others. You're bonded forever. It's very important and special.
This is also why you have such a special relationship with animals, because you're like, oh no, the magical animal bond will ensure that they always have to love me.
Yes.
But
Vaniel, he does face some homophobia early on, but it's one of the things that was so distinct about this book and important about this book is that rather than framing it as, oh no, something's wrong with Vaniel, he's divergent from the expectation, it was framed as, oh no, Vaniel's family is bad and unloving and unkind, and he gets away from them and he finds a family and he finds joy and community, even though he does suffer consequences I feel are a bit outsized for youthful mistakes.
I mean, it's important to note that the mistakes that happen are not his, right? Like the things that happen to him are because he's made bad choices in dating, and I feel like you might understand something like that, maybe.
Oh, Grand Arbiter, shots fired. Shots fired. But also
I love how you definitely don't know what she's talking about, but I absolutely do.
I do not know what this reference is. Is this about the...
It's a Yu-Gi-Oh reference.
Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm like, is this about Rick Riordan? What? I don't understand.
I think, or it's something similar of that nature. There's a lot of people getting possessed by spirits. He's technically not a god, though. He's a pharaoh, which is kind of like a god, but not the same.
So
at some point, I will do a. If you are really interested in the Grand Arbiter explains the concept of different anime to Madame Askew as a Patreon's Corner, please advocate for that and convince your friends to advocate for that in our Discord, which Madame Askew will provide the link to now.
Oh, yes. All right. Let me get that. Absolutely. And I think everyone who's here currently in the chat is in our wonderful Discord. Thank you all for being there. But if
you're watching after the fact, the Discord link is there somewhere. It might still be active. And if it's not, you can bother us on any sort of social needs and we'll find it. The best way is to tag us on Blue Sky asking for it.
That's correct. We're both active on Blue Sky. And we like it there.
I post every day, which I think is very hard personally, but I do it. So you were saying about the magic horses?
Well, just, there was something special about the magic horses and that bond. I read all of Mercedes Lackey's Heralds of Valdemar books. I just became absolutely obsessed with them. But I think one of the critical pieces of this trilogy, Vanyel's trilogy, is that, as the Grand Arbiter says, the reason for his tragedy, the reason he suffers, is not because he's queer. It's because he's made some bad choices as a young person, and he spends his adulthood trying to course correct and make up for that, and to be
and also
really
they're like
good
reasonable mistakes. They're mistakes that like come from a place of pain and love and longing. They don't come from a place of like a desire for power.
No, he's never a bad person.
Even the people who are involved in his downfall aren't really bad people. They're just hurt people. Yes. There are villains. There are evil villains in the series. Yes. But the tragedy that befalls him, which spoilers for a book from 1992, the love of his life is killed. Yes. And it is quite tragic. And it's killed while it's basically the premise is that Vanyel is a very powerful mage, but not actually able to be a mage. All of his magical access points are blocked. But he can be like a magic battery. And so his boyfriend is like, hey, I'm really mad at these people who killed my family and killed my friends. So I'd like to summon some demons from hell to kill them. Can I make you my magic battery and maybe we'll fuck later? And he was like, bet.
What? Listen, we also could have a segment that is the Grand Arbiter and Madame Askew explain books badly. But I mean, that's not badly, but that's very like, it is a certain vibe. It is like a, you have coalesced this into...
it's a complicated, it's not a long book, but there's a lot of words in it.
There are. It is a 349-page book. So it's not Tolstoy, but it's also not a novella.
I thought I was being very funny in crystallizing this idea to its real core components only.
I thought so too. I thought so too, Grand Arbiter. I thought it was a very funny, like 30-second summation of the book.
Not even the book. This one portion of the book.
Yeah, a very important moment, a pivotal turning point in the series, in the plot. No, it is, however, foundational series for both of us, and we do share quite a few books in common that are older, but there's definitely a divergence point when you, being younger than I.
The fact is that most of my books that I read were older. This is more science fiction than fantasy, but I would say it's fantasy in some regards. A Wrinkle in Time.
Oh, A Wrinkle in Time. Oh, yeah. No, I mean, like, absolutely.
Like, it's definitely sci-fi, but it's also fantasy. It has like a real convergence point.
Yes.
It is why the Hugos cover both. Oversea Under Stone, which is the first book of The Darkness is Rising.
Oh, yeah, right. You love The Darkness is Rising.
I mean, I enjoyed them. Not as much as you enjoyed. You were a big vampire girly.
I was. So
the way you like carry that look of shame on your face, where you're like, I was.
Look, I still am. I still love vampire fiction, but the sort of my chagrin is that I read Interview with a Vampire when I was probably 15-ish, 14, 15. Fairly young, very impressionable, and I'm not certain I would give those books to.
I mean, it's foundational. It built a foundation, whatever that foundation is.
Also, Scott Mistress, no lies detected. That's true. Scott Mistress says, "Girl, we all had a Laurel K. Hamilton phase." Yes, mine lasted right up until Obsidian Butterfly, and then I was done. Yeah, no, and I love this. Yes, over jewelry. That's so good. Most of J.R.R. Tolkien's work, people find
another one that I think we both shared though was we had the Anti line Witch in the Wardrobe, Philip Pullman's books that were both very something you were into.
We read them at very different times in life. You read them as a child, and they are young adult fiction. They're meant for young people. We both love this series. Starts out with the Golden Compass.
And then it's the Subtle Knife, and then the Amber Spyglass.
Right.
I'm a big fan of magical artifacts that are the centerpiece of a piece. I love a magical artifact.
Yeah. No. And look, there's a real there's plenty of the fantastical in these books. You can also make a real argument, especially for A Golden Compass. It's got some real steampunk sci-fi vibes as well. I read those as an adult, and so I sort of had my flavors of fiction, and a lot of my identity was already very formed. But I absolutely was smitten with that series. I gobbled it right up. It is the antithesis in many ways of both A Wrinkle in Time and Lion, the Witch in the Wardrobe, because it is a more atheistic view of the universe. And so it's like really the sub rosa commentary is all about like debunking.
It's very interesting because it's I think that I would walk away with like both of these pieces are very interesting because I think that The Wrinkle in Time better walks that line of in between, because A Wrinkle in Time and its associated series there's like not a lot of mention of like capital G God in the same way. And Wrinkle in Time has a tendency to be more like the universe has order, whether or not we perceive of that order, which I think is a different thing than a magic lion will fix everything, I promise, which is like totally fine. Magic lion, I hope there's a magic lion that fixes everything. I'm shocked it's not a lioness and not it being a male lion is kind of shocking actually because they're notoriously lazy. But that might explain everything that's going on in the last few months. But
good night, Alicia.
Alicia. We're about to close out ourselves.
Thanks for spending time with us and our book discussion.
I think when we think about formative texts for ourselves, and I think that like when we think about books that were like our first books, generally you and I both leaned towards books that perceive a world outside themselves, and then continue to grow. And I think that's the reoccurring theme of the books that like tend to mean a lot to us, tend to be rich in rereadability.
Yes.
And also have a lot more to say about like what we wanted out of the world. Like, I definitely think that like something that really meant a lot to me when I was growing up was that I hate to admit it, but I think I was a weird kid and not that many people got me. Shocking. Yeah. I know.
Grand Arbiter, this will surprise you so much. I know. I also was a strange child and not well understood by many. My grandfather really got me. And my grandmama admired me and thought I was lovely. But also, those are not children. I was not necessarily well understood by my peers.
But I do think there's something to be said about there's something magical about these books and how we pick these books to talk about. Because like you and I spent a lot of time on Magic Spawn, probably more than we intended. But I also think it's such a reference to like what's like it's not the hinge of our friendship, but it really explains a lot of our shared experiences. And I think that that's kind of always a really interesting thing where it's like, what's the book that you and your best friend both love? And what about that book connects the two of you? And I think for you and I, it connects us in different ways because for me, Daniel's longing and tragedy of loneliness is one that really spoke to me as an incredibly lonely queer teenager, desperate to feel like I have the ability and capacity to have romantic love and feel those feelings and have them reciprocated. And I think from your perspective, it's Daniel's ability to build a family around him over and over again after they're destroyed every book.
Yeah.
That really like reflects on like the things you want out of the world is the ability to be resilient and rebuild after tragedy.
Well, I do think that found family continues to be the theme that I come back to again and again in fiction. I love it so much. I really seek it out. And I don't want to get too maudlin at the end of our stream today, but because of the nature of my growing up, I was definitely hunting for validation. It was possible to distance yourself from parts of your family who did not love you and to find that elsewhere and to create it for yourself. Very important. And I feel very fortunate that I have succeeded in doing that as an adult. So it is just one of those.
And I must say, you've succeeded in all parts of your life. As much as you are a person who sometimes is challenged, you've actually never found, I don't think there's been a moment in your life in which you haven't had people surrounding you who love you. And I know that you may not know that, but you are charming and delightful, and everyone does want to be around you. That's why they're all here.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. And also, perhaps
ensure that we don't die of sorrow and loneliness by contributing to our Patreon.
Yes, please. But also, perhaps the Grand Arbiter and I can put together a list of some of our shared books that were foundational for us to share on Patreon for all of you, as we only scratched the surface of what we plan to talk about tonight. But I'm delighted we took so much time to talk about Vaniel's story and the Last Herald Mage series.
It's our, I would say, even though I have not read the book in almost 20 years, I'm very old, but I will say that it's one of those things where it's like, it's so clear that we were meant to be friends.
It's true. It's true.
We were destined. Am I your purple-eyed horse?
Yes, you're my purple-eyed horse. But also, thank you, Lady June Squirrel. We love you too, my darling. And we love all of you so much, our wonderful, magical community.
And we will put vampire books as a discussion for the future. I think vampire books as longing personified. Madame Askew and the Grand Arbiter talk about the metaphor of vampirism. Might be a fun topic to talk about.
Absolutely. We will be coming back with more nonsense going forward into the month of June. So this Saturday, the Tucson Steampunk Society has an in-person event happening in the morning at 11 a.m. We're going for tea at the Scented Leaf right here in Tucson. But in the afternoon, I'll be hosting Saturday Crafternoon in our Discord. So come join us for some crafting and nonsense. But also, starting next week, I kick off our very first ever introduction to waistcoats and tailoring class. There's still time to register for the class. I will be closing registration tomorrow at midnight.
Don't miss out.
Yes, so please consider registration for that. You can find the link in my link tree on our website and at Patreon. I've posted it all over.
And if there's a late registrant who's just desperate, if you cry hard enough in the Discord, I bet we could make something happen.
That is true. I also do have scholarships available. So if you're a person who would like to do this class, but for whatever reason you are unable to afford to do it right now, please reach out to me privately. We always are able to have scholarships sponsored by our Patreon community. So we have 2 of those, and I have a special third scholarship for this class for any federal employee who lost their job in the recent political shakeup that's been going on here in the United States. So if you're interested in taking the class, if you want to make a West kit with me and a wonderful community of sewists, please message me. Please register. We'd love to have you in the class. That will be going into July. It's a long class, very much like the corsetry class.
There's vacation time. You'll get breaks.
There is. So we've got that coming up. We'll have Friday tea. June is Pride Month, and the Grand Arbiter and I are very proud of who we are.
And I'm very proud of our June. Not only is June proud of the gays, but the gays are proud of June. Congratulations, June Squirrel.
Lady June Squirrel, we all love you. It is Lady June Squirrel's birthday on Sunday, so please.
I suspect you should tag them in the Discord. Send your favorite filthiest gay book recommendations. Ideally, the spicier the better, is my understanding. And
with werewolves and shifters, a bonus.
Yeah, and if you've got like great fan art that you want to share of your favorite dinosaur shifters, feel free to share it, tagging the artist, letting us know about it. Just engage with the Discord.
Please.
And June, we adore you and treasure you.
Yes, we do. You are a treasure beyond price. You are a true delight. We are so honored to have you in our community. Thank you to all of you who show up to join us for Friday Tea, to be our Patreon subscribers, and to be part of our wonderful community at conventions and here virtually. Please remember to treasure
etc.
Grand Arbiter, honestly, I do hate it when you do that so much. But we're going to say goodnight, and we will see you next time. Cheers, everybody.